Do you want to hear the funniest story related to Danny Brown? Right before like Triple X came out, he was working with Lloyd Banks, who was part of G Unit, who obviously G Unit is like 50 Cent, all those guys. Danny Brown was about to sign with G Unit, and I guess they met up with him, and 50 Cent was like, "I'm not signing this man." And you want to know why?
Because of his voice?
No.
Well.
It's because of skinny jeans. So,
I always thought that it was pronounced gunnet.
on his breakout album, Triple X, Danny Brown rapped with a hunger about achieving a career in rap that hinged on him finding success before he turned 30. On the album's title track, he raps, "Say I'm getting old, time's running out, repeating instrumentals trying to figure patterns out. I never leave the house, ain't slept in 3 days." After the album's release, Danny would come to be known as hip-hop's wild child. With his missing front tooth, trademark cartoonish laugh, and his drug-fueled antics, the world became his oyster. Fast forward 5 years to the album Atrocity Exhibition, and we get a much different Danny. Whereas before there was glamour in the prospect of dying like a rock star, now Danny raps, "Been in this room for 3 days, think I'm hearing voices, paranoid and think I'm seeing ghosts." How did Danny get to this point? We'll answer all that and more on today's episode. So for all things that make you feel sad, bad, or generally just not rad, this is Existential Shred. I hope that wasn't too long for the intro.
I don't think so.
We only have like a minute for the song.
Yeah. Was $25 on Triple X?
No,
No?
that was
Okay.
on Old.
That was the one. That's the song I knew the most by him originally.
Mhm.
But I think I did listen to Triple X a long time ago.
Mhm. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to start by asking, like, what do you know about Danny Brown, or what's been your experience with Danny Brown previous to this?
The first time I think I heard Danny Brown was actually because like I went through a little stint where I was kind of in the band Purity Ring,
Mm-hmm.
and they were featured in $25. I had a lot of friends that listened to him. My parents, when they owned the tattoo shop, both of their apprentices listened to him. That was probably 2013. Yeah.
That would be, about when he was, because Triple X came out 2011, Old came out 2013.
Yeah. They called him fringe style. They were all about like that style, like I don't want to say dirty. He had that not exactly homeless vibe, but kind of like homeless vibe.
No, yeah, a lot of people, especially back then, they basically were just calling him a crackhead.
Yeah.
Or he was mostly compared to like Old Dirty Bastard. That was the big thing because he was just like this wild guy who had a lot of personality, and at different times he like leaned into that or kind of strayed away from it. One of the things was like Old Dirty Bastard, he died pretty young. So part of it when Danny was really coming up, or like when he had made it onto the scene finally, like as a fan, I've been listening to him since Triple X came out, so it's over 10 years at this point. I remember listening to him and being like, oh, he's gonna die. He will make like another album or two and then he's gonna die.
Yeah, with the drug-fueled antics and everything he was getting into, like it wouldn't have been like a surprise to hear like Danny Brown died and be like, yep.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times what you saw was he either leaned into like the kind of eccentric nature of being compared to someone like that and having that personality, and then also understanding like it's not a good thing to be compared to someone like that because of what happened. So to kind of get into Danny Brown a little bit, because I'm a little bit of a Danny Brown historian, I would say he is my favorite rapper of all time.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Not only would I say he's my favorite, I think he's just the greatest rapper of all time.
He's very, very good. I didn't know that he got compared to ODB a lot, and that kind of makes it, to me, I appreciate more that he was on Ghostface Killer's Sour Soul because of that as well. Like,
Yeah, and a lot of people like I remember it was some interview. I think it was there's a really good one of the biggest. It was one of the funniest things back in when he was first coming up was Noisy did it's called Back and Forth Interviews, and it started out with him and ASAP Rocky, and it's like the first video is like a 5-part series, and I think he talks about being compared. It's one of those. I don't know if it's that one, but it's one of them, and he talks about being compared to like ODB.
you sent me that years ago. I do remember watching that.
It's so funny. It's so hilarious. I think they became really good friends, and they just have really good chemistry. They're both hilarious. at one point he's like, I don't really like being compared to him because he did all that weird stuff with his voice and like singing, and he's like, I don't really do that. I think he says something like, people just think like I'm a crackhead. So he like kind of leans into it or backs away from it. Even on Old, one of the promotional singles was called ODB, and he couldn't release it on the album because of sample clearance, but it was supposed to be, from what I remember, it was supposed to be the last song on Old, and it was supposed to be like him talking about just being a dirty old man and kind of relating it to ODB. So at different times he's kind of leaning into it or he's backing away from it.
I was gonna say, you said like he didn't like that because of what ODB did with his voice and him not doing that, but he sounds completely different on different tracks in this album. Like the second track, I've only known the like quintessential Danny Brown voice forever, and then I was like, well, who's featured on this? And I looked and there wasn't anybody.
Yeah, Danny. So the most immediately recognizable thing and the biggest detractor for most people for Danny is going to be his voice. He has a very specific, very unique, very identifiable, high-pitched voice.
It's one of the most unique, I think, voices in rap in general, like rap and hip hop.
Yeah, it's very cartoonish. It's very over the top, very eccentric. He puts that on. That is not his normal speaking voice. It's not his normal rapping voice. He's even said like when he does that voice, he can't breathe. So when he's recording or when he's rapping on stage, he's basically suffocating himself.
He has to stop. Like,
yeah, and I think I remember reading or listening to some interview where he's like, I'm literally dying for you guys out there. But yeah, so who is Danny Brown? Danny Brown from Detroit, which is pretty obvious. He takes a lot of opportunity to talk about Detroit. Detroit, not a very great place to grow up. Part of the Rust Belt, not very well off. On Triple X, he talks about how you walk through the neighborhood, it's field, house, abandoned house, field. So kind of get an understanding of the landscape. 2011, Triple X comes out. The whole concept, Triple X 30, Danny was rapping for a while. He gained notoriety, but he wasn't really catching his big break. So he basically said, if I don't make it in rap before 30, like I'm just going to stop. That was kind of the Hail Mary pass. Let's see if something happens. Eventually, he got signed to Fool's Gold, which is A-Track's label, which A-Track, child prodigy, DJ, went on to be Kanye West's DJ at one point. He, through Fool's Gold, put out Kid Cudi's first like big single, Day and Night. He went on, he signed Run the Jewels after they put their album through Adult Swim. So really unique, like underground label with a lot of really talented people. Triple X kind of established this formula of that would be followed, at least with Old, like pretty definitively, of having two sides. So side A, side B, not super clearly defined. I think on Old there absolutely is a side A, side B.
Yeah, there definitely was. I've listened to Old before.
He wanted to do that with Old specifically to make it feel like a vinyl or to like format it for vinyl. But what you see with Triple X and Old is Triple X, the first half is very like drugged up. It's just high energy, like drugs, like not necessarily, I would say, glorifying it, but at least Danny talking about his experience with drugs. And then the second half is very much a somber reflection on drug use, and the way you can look at it in Triple X or in Old, it's, you know, the high of being on drugs and then kind of the come down of withdrawal.
It's the flip side.
Exactly.
Right? The good and the bad.
Yeah. Triple X was like really kind of homegrown. There was only 2 rap features, Dopehead and Chips. Dopehead is his cousin. They're both part of Bruiser Brigade, which is his little crew. Most of the production was handled by Skywalker, which we just watched Danny Brown at Gathering of the Juggalos. Skywalker was the guy in the patterned shirt walking around with him.
He's his DJ on stage also.
Yeah. So it was mostly people like he knew, was related to, or like came up with. Old came around, whereas Triple X is more definitively about kind of like drug use, things like that. Old is about kind of a return to style. He got his notoriety, he got his flowers. Then there were immediate detractors being like, oh, we want the old Danny Brown. So he was like, all right, I'll give you the old Danny Brown. And front half is the old Danny Brown. Second half is where you start to see his artistry kind of expanding. He's known for really being able to take on any kind of music. Like you said, he was on Sour Soul with Ghostface Killah and Bad Bad Not Good. He's worked with groups like the Avalanches.
I will say, having listened to what I did before Atrocity Exhibition, I was a lot more surprised hearing this because it was a lot more experimental almost. Like there's parts of it that really remind me of JPEG Mafia like style beats. Having that, I'm a big fan of the experimental and like alternative ways to do things, sounds, and I instantly started getting hooked to this album a lot more.
Yeah, I think that's part of why, like, I think Danny is as good of a rapper as he is, and I think he is the greatest of all time. I think he sees music as like a challenge where he's like, if I'm going to be the greatest, I have to be able to do anything. And he works with like even a lot of EDM artists like now Dorian Electra, Rusty. He didn't really stray away from any kind of stylistic change. And like you see that, you say JPEG Mafia, he put out an album with JPEG Mafia called Scaring the Hose.
I didn't know that. I have to listen to that.
Yeah, it's a full collaborative album, just him and JPEG.
Yeah, I love JPEG also, so it's like...
Yeah, and they obviously they kind of connect because they're willing to take on the challenge of really pushing forward rap as an art style.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2013 to 2016, right after Old came out, a lot of Danny getting more into like EDM. He's working with a lot of EDM artists. He's doing like festivals, things like that, partying a lot. And it was at this point I was reading in an article that he was sitting down to write Atrocity Exhibition and he wasn't really sure what he wanted to write. And he called Nas, famous New York rapper. And Nas just told him like, just rap. And Danny said that Atrocity Exhibition is a narrative snapshot of the moment that Triple X was released. So there's a lot of, it captures the pressures of his visibility as an artist and a person, especially given the eccentric, like goofy character he is, as well as like the expectations of someone like him to perform now that he has the spotlight.
Yeah, he's a lot more in the limelight. It's expected to do more.
Yeah, and even
to sell more.
Yeah, and even like if you're known as this like over the top, goofy, kind of wild, druggy guy,
people expect that.
Yeah.
And it's not what you want to do anymore. It's yeah.
Yeah, and even to kind of like get into the album a little bit. At one point in the album, he says something like fans give me drugs thinking they're showing love. And he's like, so I do drugs more than I ever did because people just give me them because they think they're being like fans of the music.
Yeah, if he's a drug-fueled, eccentric character, like what is he gonna want? Just give him drugs, and then he's gonna do them because people are giving them to him, and it's just fueling it even more.
Yeah, and even if he gets to a point where he is reflecting on what it's doing to him, everywhere he goes, people are just gonna be like, take this, take for free. And he's like, oh. Sure, okay. Like even if he had the desire to quit and took the steps, like being faced with that temptation day in and day out is going to wear it down on you.
That happens, I think, to just performers in general, though. Like whether it, that's your act or not. But there's a comedian. It was a very, very funny story. I'm trying to remember which comedian it was, but he said that somebody came up to him after a show and gave him a pill and was like, "Here, I think you need this based off, your bit." He's like, "I listen to you a lot and I think you really need this." And he didn't know what it was, so he said before taking it, he went home and like read the letters and numbers on it and Googled it to see what it was, and it turned out to be Imodium. He's like, "How often am I talking about diarrhea on stage?" And somebody's like, "Here's a pill for that."
That's very funny. Yeah, I guess that's the opposite end of Danny Brown's story.
yeah. But it's still like
it sets up the idea of like what your perception is to people and what they want to do to help fuel that perception or at least connect with you in some way. So Atrocity Exhibition is a reference to a Joy Division song. Danny Brown is just a fan of Joy Division and Ian Curtis as a performer generally. There's a couple references to other artists in titles. So Atrocity Exhibition is a very direct reference to Joy Division. The first song, Downward Spiral, is a reference not only to a Danny Brown song on Triple X, but also to a Nine Inch Nails album that deals a lot with, very dark themes, depressions, anxieties, suicidal ideations, things like that. Atrocity Exhibition is mostly produced by Paul White. He produced, which he's worked with Danny throughout his career. He did 3 songs on Triple X, 5 songs on Old, and 10 on Atrocity Exhibition. All of the most experimental songs on this are going to be by Paul White. You'll notice that very quickly. And he's even quoted as saying, all of the music he creates is really crazy and hard to rap on, but Danny's always willing to pick the most experimental stuff from him. So it kind of just shows the working relationship they have. And a lot of themes of garage rock, psychedelia, post-punk, techno. There's some elements of soul, and it's really haunting. Yeah, I would say it's really haunting and really disorienting throughout.
Yeah.
Almost immediately, the first track, Downward Spiral, which is a reference to, like I said, Nine Inch Nails, the first track on Triple X. He talks about, it's the downward spiral, got me suicidal, but too scared to do it, so these pills will be the rifle.
Yeah.
And he's talking, so it's a direct reference to that song as well. Yeah, it just immediately kicks off with a vibe that you're probably not going to get on any other rap record.
I mean, and right off the bat, he's talking about, like you said, paranoia, seeing ghosts. He's not in a good spot.
No.
In general, is right out of the gate. Just set it up for the rest of the album.
Yeah, and it kicks off with a really, I just imagine the instrumental is a guitar, some really heavy drums, not heavy in terms of how they hit, but just low, bassy drum, and it sounds like you're just in a garage filled with smoke.
It's kind of going off the Nine Inch Nails thing that I didn't know before, but it kind of did have a little bit of an industrial-ish kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
Which is what Trent Reznor primarily makes, is industrial.
Yeah. And there's so much immediate setting up of where Danny is at. Obviously the intros for any album is really supposed to set the mood for what you should expect for the rest of the album, but this really puts you in the headspace of Danny. He's paranoid in a room. He's been just doing drugs. He's not sleeping. All of these things. And it's a really reflective track. There's a lot of insanely quotable, or at least memorable, because it's not something you're just going to be happy and quoting these lyrics. But
I was going to say, even going in, not just to being the paranoid and drug fuel, it says a lot of lewd things, but talking about being in a threesome and not being able to do anything because of everything he's doing. The paranoia, the stress, the drugs are just really causing struggles in his life everywhere.
Yeah, it's definitely an album. I think for people who probably don't enjoy rap as much, they can listen to it and be like, oh, he's just talking about having money and drugs and this whatever.
It really isn't what he's he is, but
it's so much more poignant because it's so much more reflective and self-aware of how much all of this lifestyle is killing him, mentally, physically. It's destroying him.
Normally in rap, whenever people are talking about that, it's bragging. Where this, it's I have all this, and it's only pushing his downfall faster.
I wouldn't say it's anti materialist or anti. There's a lot of discussion, or he talks a lot about having a lot of money and how much it doesn't mean anything. There's a line in one of the songs where he's talking about basically just says, this woman loves me, but love doesn't make money. It's messed up, but that's the way it is. Mm-hmm. But on Downward Spiral, one of like the standout lines and like I guess like handful of bars is he says, everybody says you got a lot to be proud of. I've been high this whole time. I don't realize what I've done. And when I'm all alone, I feel like no one cares. Like that is like, just take that. And that's what you should expect for the rest of the album.
Absolutely.
It's praise, admiration. He is people from a critical standpoint, people love him. His fans love him. He's accomplished all this stuff, but for him, it doesn't really mean much. Like, because when, like he said, when no one's around, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, the most unique thing, like you said, track 2 kicks off and it's him rapping in his normal cadence. The continuation of like the really experimental beats, it starts off really mellow, just like a string, like a kind of like hit in the back, and then it kicks off with like these really unique drum patterns and him talking about like life on the street and what he came up through, and kind of talking about like people telling you like, if you're in that lifestyle, like this is how it's going to end, this is what's going to happen. He's like, yeah, I've been through that. Like I know exactly what's going to happen. I've had friends that have been killed. I've been in jail. I've written letters saying like, I miss you. I need money on my books, things like that.
That is a very poignant line in that too. Like talking about writing the letters from jail, like that. When I was listening and reading along with the lyrics, like that hit me in general.
Yeah, even I think one of the like the saddest parts of that song is he's talking about his friend being killed, going to the liquor store. He's
just went to get a Swisher.
Yeah, and he's breaking down the weed when the call got received. So there's implications of like, you know, maybe they were like, oh, I'll go to the store or whatever, but like generally the friend got killed going to like, they were probably about to have a like fun, like have a good time. And then
it sounds like they were talking about, like he was saying about being ambitious. Like they were trying to set up their own kind of weed selling operation. And like, I think it got in over their head is kind of what I gathered from it.
Yeah, there's always potential for that because they, even in later tracks, he's talking about making drugs, distributing them. Like, so it's not, and that is like, he was a drug dealer. Like he did actually go to jail. And even in this song, he talks about like the whole idea is they're young and dumb. They're kind of acting tough, showing off. And then they get raided by the cops to go to jail. So again,
it's real. And
yeah. And it's that idea of like, people always warn you about this stuff. And he's like, I've been through this. I know exactly what to expect. Tell me something. Tell me what I don't know.
Yeah.
After that is the first feature of the album, which there's not a lot of features. There's 2 singers and technically 6 rappers.
The first feature is Kendrick and Absol, right?
So track 3 is Rolling Stone, which features Petite Noir.
Okay, I missed. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah, which they're a South African singer. I don't know a lot about them, but then later tracks you have the Posse cut with Kendrick Lamar, Absol, Earl Sweatshirt. You have From the Ground with Kalela, and then not too long after that you have Get High with Be Real. And then there's kind of like, I don't want to say hidden rap feature because it's just ad-libs, but on Pneumonia is Schoolboy Q, and he's only doing ad-libs, which is very funny to me.
Yeah.
And if you know his voice, if you listen to him, you can hear him. It's very apparent. They're just good. Like him, Danny Brown, and A$AP Rocky were like, at one point they were in a feud over Kathy Griffin. Like they were fighting over who could court Kathy Griffin, and it culminated in A$AP Rocky and Danny Brown going on Kathy Griffin's show.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so they're all awesome. They're all really good friends. Schoolboy was also featured on Old.
Isn't Schoolboy also pretty good friends with Earl Sweatshirt too? Isn't it? They do some stuff together. Or he was at least featured on a few of his stuff.
I think so. I mean, they kind of work. I mean, they're all from like California, kind of the Los Angeles area, and even Schoolboy has worked with producers like The Alchemist in the past. He's worked with Tyler in the past.
Yeah.
that whole crew is also close with Vince Staples. Vince Staples has worked with Schoolboy Q,
Yeah.
which The Alchemist is actually one of the producers on this album.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
He did.
I like The Alchemist. I like a lot of his stuff, but one of my favorite things he's ever done was The Alchemist and Domo Genesis album. It's really, really good.
No Idols.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alchemist is just kind of a legend at this. Like he's.
Yeah.
I mean, even his earlier stuff with like Mobb Deep up to now, where he's kind of had this legendary run of working with people like Boldy James, a lot of the newer like really minimalist rap styles that kind of also go along with people like Conway the Machine, Benny the Butcher, West Side Gun. It's crazy how long of a storied career he has.
Yeah.
But one of the things I always felt so dumb thinking this, listening to this album, but Rolling Stone with Petite Noir, that song is what I imagine The Cure sounds like. I don't know why, but I just imagine like the South Park goth kids,
Yeah.
and this is what they listen to, and that's just Danny Brown decided to rap on it. But the title is very thematic. Rolling Stone, Rolling Stone gathers no moss. It's kind of this idea of he's always on the move, always touring. Again, kind of these really introspective moments. He one of my favorite lines, and it's not the most profound line, but he just says, "People say I think too much. I don't think they think enough." And this is when he says that I love her, she loved me. Love ain't enough with no bucks. So all of these like really moments of isolation, despair, and like even a loss of control, where he's talking about self-medicating and how his music is dependent on having an audience, and his audience kind of set up these expectations for him to continue this really destructive lifestyle. And even
then with him being, obviously, it sounds like he probably tells people like, "Hey, I'm not happy entirely," and they're like, "Well, you're just overthinking it." And like he's like, "No, you guys aren't. You guys don't think in general." Like,
yeah, like what are you supposed to tell? Like if the guy who's touring the world as a world famous rapper is like, I'm actually sad.
Yeah, and he's making money, and like that's not the thing he cares about. It's not making him happy.
Yeah, and you really get a sense for like, I think the chorus of this song shows the extent of his addiction at this time. Because the chorus, Petite Noir, which he sings, and like I said, for some reason in my head, he just sounds exactly like, what's his name?
I don't remember the guy from the Cure's name.
It's Robert something. It's Robert Smith?
No, are you thinking of Morrissey from the Smiths?
No.
No? Okay. I don't know then. It might be Robert Smith. I didn't listen to The Cure enough to know about it, or about that band.
Because he was also on South Park. Yeah, it is Robert Smith.
Okay. My bad.
He fought Mecca Streisand.
That's right.
But Petit Noir, his chorus is, I'm in my zone, don't speak to me. I'm in my mind, I just feel so alone, just release me. There's a line where he says, it's like, I only exist to feed your shame. And it's very like, okay, the thing that brings comfort, the thing that kind of gives you some semblance of escape is also only going to, like, it only makes you feel worse the more that you participate with it.
Yeah.
And the more that you become known for being that guy, the worse it's going to feel. And it becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like you have to make music that is portraying you as this character. Because you're making music that portrays you as this character, you have to be that person.
Yeah.
And then the downward spiral.
And on top of that too, when you are self-medicating, like the idea that you can't kick it yourself, like without, it can also really affect people, which then just leads them to doing it more and more, because I feel like shit whenever I don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah, aside from the habitual aspects of it,
Yeah.
obviously there's a very physical nature to it. And then like when you come off of these things, your mental state's going to get worse. And then the easiest thing to do, well, not the easiest, but like the natural thing for someone in that position to do is to
go back to it, and
because they won't feel that anymore.
Yeah.
After that, we get the posse cut Really Dough, which again, Kendrick Lamar, Earl Sweatshirt, Ab Soul, produced by Black Milk, which Danny put out a collaborative album with right after Triple X came out, also from Detroit. Black Milk actually produced one of my favorite I should say two, because it is two songs, but they kind of go back to back. Two of my favorite rap songs of all time, because he also raps, and he put out an album called No Poison, No Paradise. It's two songs, Sunday's Best, Monday's Worst. It is just, it is perfect.
I've never heard them. I'll have to listen.
It is the perfect rap song. Monday's Worst.
That's a very good. I mean, this posse cut for Really Doe is a very, very good lineup of people as well. Like, they're all people I am a fan of in general. So, like, seeing them on it was exciting for me.
Yeah, it was I believe, second time Danny has recorded a song with Kendrick. He's had songs with Ab-Soul in the past. He did One Train with Kendrick, which was an A$AP Rocky song, which is also
that's
an
a really
amazing
good song.
posse cut. He had Terrorist Threats with Ab-Soul, which that's an amazing song. I think this is the first time him and Earl worked together. I think the beautiful thing about Really Doe is no one outshines the other. Like, I was listening to it and I was like, who has the best verse? I don't know if I can say who has the best verse, but I can definitely say no one underperforms and no one outshines the other person.
Yeah, I feel that way with like a few of the other posse cut like songs you sent me. The Power's Pleasant one with Denzel Curry and Zillakami, and that one is such a good mix together that it just goes so perfectly.
The thing that I wasn't sure of as I was kind of doing my research for this, Really Doe kind of felt out of place amongst the whole album, even though like thematically really like creepy glockenspiel-esque, like even it might be a glockenspiel. A lot of people attribute it to being a glockenspiel. As I was listening to it, I was thinking it might be a xylophone or something, but really like creepy driving instrumentation. The drum beat is a little quicker paced, and thematically from that point it fits, but I was like, how does it fit into the narrative of the album? And as I was researching it, there is one song that Danny says is not thematic to the album, and it's not this. So I was like, all right, how does it fit into the album? And I was like, if we're thinking of it from like a linear perspective, it probably is meant to display like how people around him he's garnered. Like, he has the fame, he has the admiration, so now he's working with who he believes to be the best in the industry. In a way, that's kind of what I got out of it. That's how I could connect it. If you had to take a stab, what do you think the one song on the album that he says is not thematic?
When It Rain is my guess.
It's a good guess, but no, it's Pneumonia.
Oh, that's really?
Yeah, which it's so funny because that song is so abrasive.
Yeah, you pulled up and I was vibing to it though when you got here.
Yeah, it's such an abrasive song. The most immediately noticeable thing is how many percussive instruments are in it. Let's say I counted. There's a bass drum, hand cymbals. There's a ride. There's at least 4 snares, 2 different ones on the verse, 2 different one on the chorus that kind of fluctuates. There's also vocal samples, there's reverse sounds, there's build-ups, there's piano reverberations. It's just this, we love describing things as a cacophony.
Yeah, we do a lot.
But man, it is such a disorienting cacophony of really abrasive instrumentation. And he said that is it's the only song on the album that isn't thematic. And the funniest part is he was like, this is the party song. Which, who is putting this? Who's
on
putting
at a party?
Yeah,
yeah.
That is, it's just not happening. But yeah, after the posse cut, there's a big chunk of the album that gets really manic. That's when we have Lost, which produced by Playa Hayes, who I looked into, produced songs with like Vinnie Paz of Jedi Mind Tricks, does old Danny Brown stuff, artists like your old Droog, and it's just all about cocaine, how much Danny loves doing cocaine, and I think that's a big, like, thematically it sets up this very manic high, this very
Yeah.
like energized, like just gritting your teeth and kind of like wide-eyed high. Because right after you get Ain't It Funny, which I had you watch the music video as I was driving up here to kind of, because I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because it plays into a lot. Obviously, it's a music video for the song on the album, but the video itself as an independent piece of media also really displays what Danny is bringing to the table in terms of messaging.
Yeah, it's very, very thematic to everything else that he's discussing, and like this album is a discussion of.
Yeah, it's set up as an 80s sitcom.
Yeah.
It's like Uncle Danny. And the music video one is directed by Jonah Hill.
I didn't notice that till the end. I didn't see it in the description. And I was like, is that a joke or did he actually do it? And
No,
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, he really did.
Is he a big Danny Brown fan?
I believe there's a lot of people you wouldn't expect to love Danny Brown the way that people do.
After listening to a good portion of this album, I'm not as surprised as I would be. It would have been a few years back to find that out.
Yeah, like I think I thought I wrote it down. I wish I would have. I think I did. But even I think I saw, I want to say it was Jeff Rosenstock was like, Ain't It Funny is the best song of that year. I could be wrong about that, but I'm almost positive. I'd bet the house on that one. But yeah, music video directed by Jonah Hill. Gus Van Sant, the director of Good Will Hunting, plays the father.
I knew the name. I didn't know what I knew him from.
Yeah. Joanna Kearns from Growing Pains plays the mother. And it's all about, Ain't It Funny as a song, along with the music video, is all about how he is just going to, like, how horrible his addiction is getting.
People aren't paying attention. He's saying this, and people are just laughing because he's this character.
Yeah, one of the first, because I honestly, I remembered there being a music video, but I was like, I didn't remember particular aspects of it. So when I was listening to the album and writing my notes, I was like, you know what, I'm going to watch the music video, see if there's anything to pull out. And one of the first things is there's like a lot of subtitles because the characters are talking, but you're not supposed to hear them over the actual music. And he said, he's just saying things like, I'm empty inside, just like outright. And then it's kind of the canned laughter of a sitcom.
Well, even like the opening of the music video, it's him and the daughter in bed smoking. He's got a 40 that just says Danny Brown on it.
Yeah.
And she, like, it's not just him either in the group of people that obviously have problems, because the girl right off the bat is like, I'm attracted to older men because they notice me or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then he just goes, what's he say?
Because at one point he says, I'm fucked up, and everyone thinks it's a joke.
He says that then. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But we get that right after like the intro again, where they're still in bed, and she's just like, I'm really worried about you. And he's like, this is just getting worse. Like,
yeah. Even like at one point in the video, he's literally smoking a crack pipe, and the audience is laughing, and he just says, I have a serious problem. Please stop laughing.
And it seems like the only other person in the family that also recognizes it is the daughter.
Yeah. Well, at one point in the music video, the dad, he's having like what's supposed to be like a heartfelt sitcom, heart to heart. Because he sees Danny peeing on the couch.
He's pissing on the flowers and the pictures be like on the couch. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I think this is where the music does drop out, because it's supposed to like, it's honestly it's one of those moments where it does kind of hit hard, where he says, he's like, why are you doing this? And he's like, I feel destroyed, and maybe if I destroy something, I'll feel something.
He says, I'll feel okay, or something along those lines. He's like, none of us feel all right. Yeah.
And then even in the music video, at one point, there's a giant bottle of lean, promethazine codeine, it's like a Chuck E. Cheese mascot type thing.
Yeah, and a pill.
And a Xanax bar. And he's telling them, like, you're my only friends, and then they end up stabbing him and killing him.
The line that they say is, we're going to kill everyone you love, you and everyone you love.
Yeah, which is very on the nose. It's not, but it's not supposed to be like like it's not nuanced. Like
No.
there should be nothing nuanced about the conversation.
The thing that is funny in this music video, I mean, obviously this music video is it's like not even a metaphor. It's just more like a simile because it's exactly what it is. The thing that is actually funny is when they are introducing the characters, like each actor, and then it says kid is played by this fucking kid.
Yeah, it's just some little kid
Yeah.
that is it like it's the butt of the joke in the 80s sitcom where he's just like Uncle Danny. And they're like, oh. But yeah, the song itself is this really like manic, just immediate like 4 on the floor drum beat, just this huge like bass, like almost like really low brass hits just driving immediately in your face, and it's so abrasive, it's so manic,
It's an assault on your senses.
yeah,
Like, it is.
to the uninitiated, it could be a very genuinely difficult song to
Yeah.
listen to because you have this really driving drum pattern, this really low brassy hits that are just really in your face. You have Danny's voice that's really shrill, and in the chorus it gets more
Yeah.
shrill, and it's just such a like a good representation of that kind of mania.
I think you said to the uninitiated, it can seem this. That also is very true for a lot of this album because there's such different styles of beats throughout it, and then, like you said, towards this middle, it's just like full on assault. And I think, like you said, also it is talking about like this section of the album also has white lines on it, right? And gold dust, so it is talking about like the upper drugs a lot more.
Yeah, and even in Ain't It Funny, one of the lines that stands out is he says nosebleeds on red carpets, but it just blends in, which is kind of a double entendre with obviously if your nose is bleeding on the red carpet, the blood will blend in, but then also like if you have a nosebleed on the red carpet, you're doing cocaine, which celebrities love cocaine. You
Celebrities
probably
love cocaine.
they're not gonna like think twice about it.
And
no one's gonna be like your nose is bleeding. And
Yeah.
be like concerned. It's
Everybody, like, with how much, I'm not gonna say every celebrity does cocaine, but I'm sure that there's a lot of them that do, and that's also
I'll go out
blending
on a
in
limb.
to say every single one.
Every single celebrity
Every
does
single celebrity
cocaine.
does cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Shit. Sorry, guys, I was wrong. But like even just blending into society, nobody's gonna think twice about it. It's like, oh look, there he is, nosebleed.
Yeah.
Sorry, the air's just real dry.
My allergies. Yeah, there's some really standout lines. I actually kind of going through it. It is one of my favorite songs on the album, and there's some really standout lines. One of my favorite lines, and it's not even that it's like really profound. I just think it's really funny. He says, "I can sell honey to a bee in the fall time, make trees take back their leaves," which is like also it's meant to portray the kind of euphoria of this overinflated sense of ego that you get while you're in that manic state. But
Yeah.
it's also just like it's such a good line. Like it's
Yeah.
just funny and it's well crafted. Or even he talks about he was broke serving fiends, got rich, became an addict. Ain't it funny how it happened? Who would ever imagine? And it's just, again, he was in the streets selling drugs. Now he's rich and famous. He is the addict.
Doing the drugs that he was selling.
Yeah, it's kind of this twisted, ironic, like karmic justice in some way, which like I'm not trying to say he got what he deserved.
Yeah.
Obviously no one deserves that, but
No.
like he sees it as this kind of this cosmic balance situation.
Just like the irony behind it. Like I was the one peddling this, and now I'm the one buying it from the peddlers. Like
Yeah.
it's very like the whole song in general. Like the idea of this is what's funny, isn't it? Though, like ain't that funny? Like
Yeah. And
a very sarcastic way to like questioning.
yeah. Well, he even says like the chorus is ain't it funny how it happened? Who would imagine the joke's on you and Satan's the one laughing? So it's like, yeah, it's really dark. It's really twisted. It is this weird like irony to the situation. And like that isn't even without saying like he does address the idea of getting clean, but he kind of dismisses it just immediately. He's like, he says that he's just not going to go to rehab.
Yeah.
What he's going to do instead is drink Henny, do coke, and indulge in debauchery. that's what he's going to do instead of going to rehab and facing these issues.
Is he sober now?
I believe, yeah. He's really kind of changed his life for the, especially like after Atrocity Exhibition, you saw him become better and better. He seems very healthy now. He got his tooth replaced.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think he's probably California sober.
I get.
If he probably still drinks, but I know he's not. I believe
On
he's
all
not,
the drugs. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's more what I meant from sober.
Yeah.
Like what normal people do. Is he just drinking and smoking weed now?
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I think when I was looking up the music video, I think I saw something about talking about Danny Brown talking about sober life. Like,
Yeah, well, a lot of the stuff that he really was like the promethazine codeine lean, as it still mostly is known. Like that. Speaking of Schoolboy Q, who's on pneumonia, like he was very like vocal about how he almost died from lean. Like a lot of people have died from lean. Pimp C died from lean use. I believe DJ Screw died from lean use. Like it's just liquid heroin. So
yeah.
going on, we get to Gold Dust, which is like the weirdest on an album filled with just weird experimental beats. I always had this vision in my head of like a scenario, like if this was a movie, how this song came about, because it's like your friend's high school band practicing in a garage, and your friend who raps comes to like watch you practice, and he's like, hey, let me get the microphone, I'll rap on something you do. And they're like, yeah, okay. And they're just playing like a garage rock song, and Danny Brown just is rapping over it. Like that's immediately what it sounds like to me.
It really reminded me of something, and if I'm remembering it properly, but anybody out there who's a bigger video game nerd like me might remember too if they listen to Danny Brown. But there's a part in the game Chrono Trigger where you go in like prehistoria, and some reason the music just made me think of that like song that was in the game at that point. It sounded very much like it, and it made me think like, I wonder if Danny Brown was a fan of that game. He played that game and like was like, I want to write a song like that.
I almost guarantee he's a big gamer.
Yeah.
I know that. So I would almost guarantee, not necessarily that was directly influenced, but I bet if you told him that, he'd be like, oh wow, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Gold Dust, it's all about cocaine. Talking about just flakes looking like gold dust, being numb and using drugs to suppress his feelings. This is where he brings up he's got to the point, I don't gotta buy drugs, people just give them to me and think they're showing love. And then kind of the idea of how fast, like he got this life not overnight, but he became the star he was in a relatively small period of time. And then the song ends with him talking about blowing money fast, which is again a double entendre with like rolling up $100 bill to do cocaine, you're blowing money, but then you're also, you're just
spending
wasting money.
A shit ton of it too, yeah.
Clever double entendre there, talking about how he got this life very quickly, it could just as easily go away. After that, we get the song White Lines with Alchemist, which I love this beat. He does this weird, like, I don't want to call it syncopation because it's not really syncopated, but it's almost like a delayed like following of the melody, because it's this really weird like psychedelic like really floaty light instrumentation that the Alchemist samples, and I just love how he like kind of follows it. But yeah, some like hilarious lines in this, which the first, as soon as it kicks off, he just says, smoke so much I faint, drink so much you'll think I'll make you walk the plank, bitch you know my rank, I'm high. Which is just like, it's a very serious album, but he still throws out these really hilarious, like, clever lines.
He's definitely a funny guy in general. Like, you can hear it in his writing, the character that he plays, like, on stage as well. Like, he is a very funny person and is intelligent enough to write things very funnily, too.
Yeah, his whole, like, there's so many hilariously quotable lines throughout, like Triple X, old Atrocity Exhibition, even though again it's like the most serious album he's ever written.
It's probably his darkest too.
Oh yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure.
Which part of I think the catharsis of this album for him was there were interviews or he was having like discussions with people where after Atrocity Exhibition, I think he started writing music for himself, where it was like he wanted to be able to cultivate like a fan base and like a standing within rap where he didn't have to try to like sell albums or like he's always been averse to the idea of a radio song. Even in Triple X, he has a song called Radio Song, and it's just like it's such a jab at having to make a radio song.
A single, having to make a single for the radio, like that's what's gonna sell your album. And typically, in my experience, I end up hating a lot of singles because it's not what the artists want to do.
Yeah, and that's what he like the even the beat for Radio Song is just like a snare drum.
Yeah.
Like it has nothing to it. Like it's such a funny thing. But yeah, the after Atrocity Exhibition is I think is when he started to really make music for himself. So like you get the kind of the build up of Triple X old to the culmination of Atrocity Exhibition. Then there's the catharsis where he's just like, I've said my piece. Now I'm just gonna make music for myself, and it's a lot more lighthearted.
And even we did our pre-watch of the Gathering of the Juggalos with Danny Brown, but he says it there too, like, and I have to give a lot of respect actually to ICP at that, based off what he said, because it's something that is very true, but I never thought of. He's like, they built this from the ground up, being underground. Like, look at all these people. And he's like, this is something I hope to have someday.
Yeah, and like he talks about in that video specifically, like doing the Gathering of the Bruisers.
Yeah.
He does do every Thanksgiving. It's like Bruiser Brigade Thanksgiving, where he like it's basically a fundraiser for Detroit area families for, turkeys for Thanksgiving, things like that.
That's
so
awesome.
He's been able to build a sizable like audience to the point where he can do something similar to that. Obviously not to the size of Gathering of the Juggalos,
Yeah.
but still.
But I mean, at least he's on his way, and
Yeah.
like if he just keeps doing what he's doing, it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah, and now that he's a podcaster,
Yeah.
like people will listen to him on his podcast and then find his music, and then I'm sure if he comes to any city and they're like, "Oh, Danny Brown's performing," even if it's for his rap, like people will want to go see him.
And I didn't notice he had a podcast till today, and then you said it's part of your mom's house, which means he's working with Tom Segura and Christina P too, which is like they're huge names in podcasting. So
yeah, one of the funny things about White Lines, which I was really convinced of, there's in the chorus, it sounds like a cat meowing, and I thought Danny Brown at this point he had a Bengal tiger named Siren.
And he had a tiger.
No, like he had like a cat.
Okay,
Like a Bengal cat, I should say.
I was
Sorry.
that wouldn't surprise me, but it's also like hilarious.
No, yeah, he had a Bengal cat, and he used to talk about it all the time, named Siren, and I thought that was him putting the cat into the track, but I started listening to it more and more closely, and it's just a really, really pitched up version of his own voice doing his ad lib, and I was like, oh, all right, it's not a cat, it's just Danny Brown. But yeah, I think overall, the album, the front half is really loaded with really manic energy. It's really abrasive. It's really in your face. It's really experimental. It's meant to convey all of these kind of the worst aspects of drug use, even though like he's also talking about things that people could interpret as glamorizing that lifestyle. After the kind of middle section toward the back end of the album is it's a lot calmer. It's a lot more toned down.
If you kind of think about like drug use, the album kind of follows Getting High. You have that build up, it hits, and then you have that come down.
Yeah, which is thematic, like we talked about earlier, with how he would kind of structure his albums. I would say, I think Dance in the Water is kind of the turning point of the album for me, in my personal enjoyment. I like Dance in the Water. It's a metaphor kind of in the same sense of like you're playing with fire, you're going to get burned. But he's talking about wanting to dance in the water but not get wet. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna indulge in all these things, and I'm gonna pretend to myself like I'm gonna get out of this clean.
Yeah.
Which is just not how that works. And
Bringing it up to people giving him the drugs because it's his character. He's like, yeah, I'll keep doing it to keep this going, but I'll get out. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not gonna. I'm not gonna stay addicted.
Yeah, and I didn't realize this when I, was listening to the album, but Dance in the Water, Not Get Wet is it's kind of a Russian nesting doll of reference. So it's from an Ice Cube line, the song Ghetto Vet. So it's an Ice Cube line from a song who he got it from a Mac 10 song, who got it from a Parliament track called Aqua Boogie. So it's just this really interesting, like, Russian nesting doll of how, where did this come from?
Inspired this person, inspired this person, inspired this person.
And I think there's also, like, this is where a motif kicks off surrounding water. Or, like, when you really start to notice, there's kind of this motif surrounding water. Dance in the Water, Not Get Wet. There's, in the song From the Ground with Kalela, part of the, like, the ending chorus is, I was trapped in the storm, but I made it out the rain. He talks about, like, not having an umbrella. Pneumonia, just water in your lungs.
Water in your lungs.
It kind of just goes on from there. The track When It Rain, when it rains it pours, kind of talking about, when something's going wrong, it's gonna, most of the time it's just gonna get worse, or like if it starts to get bad, it's only gonna get worse. And even in that song, he's talking about if there isn't any water, how can a flower grow? The common metaphor you hear a lot is like you made it out the mud, but a flower can only grow when it rains. Yeah. So there's a lot of like motifs surrounding kind of water, and even like water as a metaphor is a very powerful thing. There was like an album, I don't know, have you ever heard of Mick Jenkins?
I know Mick Jenkins.
He had an album, his breakout was an album called The Waters, and it's all about water being this metaphor for like the eternal truth. So there's a lot of
it's a, like you said, it's a powerful thing. Like here in some of these songs, Danny's using it kind of like you said, play fire, you get burnt, like it's a bad thing. But also, again, coming towards the reflective part, like water can be cleansing as well as it can be destructive. So it's like, it's got this two sides to it as well.
Yeah, water carved out the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Over millions of years, but it did. but
well, in a million years, I'm sure
it's going to cut the earth in half.
Yeah, like a high pressure water hose.
But yeah, because like your best time of growth is going to be during struggles.
This is just an aside, but you want to, speaking of water and its destructive power, I used to think erosion could happen very quickly. So I would when I was a kid, I had like this, like Tonka truck, and I would fill it with rocks, and I would spray it with a hose to try to make the rocks disappear.
Kid brains are great. It's so funny. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. When It Rain is also one of my just favorite Danny Brown songs. It's such a unique, it really showcases how talented he is. It's just really like weird, psychedelic, four on the floor, has these really weird, like pingy, it sounds very organic because it has like an organic feel to it. Like obviously they're probably sampling a lot of older music, but like it sounds very computerized too, where it's like all these very like technological like pings and glitches, this is the most Detroit song on the album, which really goes to show how much he loves the city. He's talking about watching the Pistons, Trick, going to Fishbones, and then obviously the song itself is an homage to like Detroit house music. So it's just it's such an insane track. It's just and he's just rapping with all of these like rapid fire, like really quick, like punchy lines. I love that song so much. But yeah, for anybody who came from Beam out of the mainstream, we did the From Dusk Till Dawn episode, and I told you that there was a Reservoir Dogs reference on the album.
Oh yeah, you did say that.
This is where that comes from. Did you catch it?
I don't think that I did.
No. Well, he says, and I quote, "I'm like Vega rolling with that blade."
That's That's a Street Fighter reference too.
It's
a double entendre.
It's a double entendre.
Yeah.
Because you can, yes, that was like from Street Fighter, and then Victor Vega he cuts off the dude's ear.
Yeah.
So
that's I thought I picked it up as Street Fighter, but not as the Reservoir Dogs one.
Yeah, which also there's like we didn't talk about it. There's like he has the movie reference earlier in the album where he's talking about I'm like Spielberg with ill words.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously he's a movie guy.
Movie guy, video game guy.
Yeah,
finds a way to mix them both sometimes.
Yeah. After When It Rains is kind of where I get the least enjoyment out of the album. Today is I think the worst song on the album. I think you could get rid of it and there wouldn't really be anything lost. It's kind of just a very straightforward, this could get taken away at any time, live your life for today. Just I don't think it really adds anything. And then you have Get High with Be Real from Cypress Hill. It's the calmest song on the album, and it makes sense. The whole idea is this idea of like it's escapism. The Be Real is saying you had a bad day, you want to take the stress away, just roll up and take the pain away. He's talking about just smoking to get rid of all your problems, but he's also talking about like the first thing you do in the day is wake up and get high. So it's like at no point are you confronting what's going on.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good jazz references in this as well. He says, I'm blowing on some Miles, something kind of blue, which is a reference to Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. Yeah. He says, I'm Coltrane on Soul Plane. He said, I don't want to say this one.
Are you going to though? You can say it, but cut it.
Yeah, he says, your bitch go Tommy Dorsey on my trombone. But yeah, the whole the song is basically just saying like, whatever, dude, just go smoke.
Yeah.
Which, again, thematically, I get it, but it's a low point on the album for me.
If there's one that you have to be addicted to, just do it.
And then last song, Hell For It, he's really talking about like escaping his addiction. He says, activist double cups, was addicted to that, had them demons on my back and was escaping through that, blamed everybody but myself, apologies for that. So he's really taken a moment. This is like, he talks a lot about like even his place in the industry and how that might contribute to it, because he openly just names Iggy Azalea, and he's like, she thinks she's better than me, but I am clearly like, I am a better rapper. I am one of the greatest. It's crazy that the only way that your greatness is equated is through album sales. So there's a lot of like animosity in that, and you understand like how many different contributing factors there are to his mental state. And that kind of all comes out.
And he's so much more talented than
Iggy
I'm
Azalea.
Gonna say her specifically for sure. Like,
yeah, it's just, and especially at that point, because that was when she was at her peak. Now she's
nothing.
Yeah,
I haven't heard anything from her. And
the last thing that I heard about her was, so I don't know, you probably don't know who Playboy Cardi is.
I know who Playboy Cardi is. I don't listen to him, but I know the name. And
she is the mother of his son.
Yeah.
And the biggest story that I had heard from her in the last couple of years was when she was giving birth to his son, he missed out on the birth because he was playing PlayStation with Lil Uzi Vert. And she was not happy about that.
I think the last thing I heard was whenever she did that like real shitty freestyle rap. It was just like failed horribly and everybody made fun of for it.
Yeah,
like,
that was a while ago.
That was like the bombing, like the bomb.
Yeah,
like,
that was a while ago. And even on
missed the birth
of his first child.
Because playing PlayStation. That's great.
Which if you go on like certain forums that love Playboy Cardi, they're like, he was working.
That was a meeting.
Yeah. Like, all right.
So I meant to talk about this also with the before we finish off. I don't know how much more you had to talk about, but the birth part made me think of this. The other funny part in the Ain't It Funny music video is whenever he's in bed with the mother instead, and she's the one saying like, I don't know, that's not mine though. And he's like, you're the only person I've been with. It's like, it's like the reverse. Like,
yeah, there's so much in that video.
Yeah.
But yeah, to stick with Hell for it for a little, because there's a couple other things I wanted to point out, and then we can get to like final thoughts.
Yeah.
Going along with the water motif, his one of the lines is he wants to cry, so he's wishing it would rain. So again, just a water motif in like the last like handful of tracks of the album, and then this is something I wanted to point out because it points to another song by Danny Brown that I love. But on this Hell for It, he says, walking over carcasses of artists in my garden, which is a reference to a song he did with Bus Driver and Aesop Rock. I don't remember how long ago, but in that song he says, walking over carcasses of artists in my garden, been nice with this shit since Nas was writing past the margin. And I just wanted to point that out because that's the song is Ego Death by Bus Driver, and is one of like Bus Driver is a very lyrically dense rapper. Aesop Rock is obviously one of the most lyrically dense rappers, if not the most lyrically dense rapper.
I know Aesop Rock. I don't think I've ever listened to Bus Driver.
You'd probably enjoy him.
Yeah.
But that's another instance where Danny's on a song with like two very lyrical rappers, and he just brings. In fact, we'll listen to that after this because it's such a good verse. But he brings his own brand of lyricism to the table, and like going up against those two, I think he holds his own. I think he has the funniest verse and the best verse. But
he's a very, very good lyricist. Like I said before, he's smart. Like he plays this character that, like we said before, this just like manic, eccentric drug addict, but you can just tell from everything he writes how actually intelligent he is. Mm-hmm. And to go like you said, Aesop Rock is known for being like one of the most lyrically dense, like very clever with everything he says, and to be put on with them as well.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that people know Aesop Rock from is there's that like study of how many new words rappers introduce into their songs. I forget what the exact like measure was, but like and he is like high beyond like everybody. I think it's like him, Jay-Z, people like that who are like known for being very lyrical, but like introducing new words that they haven't previously used in other songs. So kind of like just being a walking thesaurus. Mm-hmm. Aesop Rock is at the top of that, but yeah, I don't know, from someone from your perspective who wasn't familiar with the album, like how did you feel after having listened to it, and like where would it stand for you in terms of like rating or like general thoughts?
I love the album. It's 7 out of 10 for me. And like I don't know, it's not that there's anything bad on it to bring that rating down. It's just like I'm not as knowledgeable about Danny Brown like you are, and it's definitely is going to make me dive into a lot more of his stuff, even stuff he released after this. He does have albums after this too.
Yeah, he has.
He said this is the one that really kicked off and making music for himself.
Yeah. After this was You Know What I'm Saying, which is executively produced by Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest, and then he just released an album which is like a spiritual sequel to Triple X because it's Quarata, which is Italian for 40.
Okay.
So he had Triple X 30.
Yeah.
This album's 40.
Like I said, I'm going to be diving into more of his music. That I don't really know what I'm comparing it to. Really, with like 7 out of 10. It's very high up for me, and I really like this album. I'll be continuing to listen to it more. And
yeah, for me, obviously, like I remember this album coming out. I remember being like excited for it, hearing the singles, and like having loved Danny Brown for his previous two albums. I had seen him live after Triple X had come out. He opened for Childish Gambino, and that was like, I remember not really being the biggest fan of him, but then like getting ready for the concert, and all of a sudden it just clicked, and I was like, whoa.
This was 2016, right? Or you said after Triple X, sorry.
Yeah.
No, 2013.
But seeing him live was just like an amazing show.
I definitely want to see him live, like after listening to this, and I guess If I were to compare it to everything else that I've heard Danny Brown, it's the highest out of, because I've heard his older stuff. And then this one being way different, just like production wise, experimental wise. Out of everything I've heard, it'd probably be the 10 out of 10. So
I would probably rate this around like an 8.4 around there. I think it's not my favorite Danny Brown album. I love Triple X. It's just that is one of my favorite albums of all time, just period. Atrocity Exhibition is great. It is one of the most forward-thinking rap albums I've ever heard. Took a lot of risk. I just think towards the back half, it doesn't hold the energy, which I know thematically it's not supposed to.
yeah,
But after such a memorable front-loaded album, the energy just dies off pretty quickly. And it's also one of those albums you're not necessarily going to just throw it on all the time. Like, you kind of have to be in like a certain headspace to really appreciate it for what it is. Whereas like the other albums you can kind of throw on whenever.
Yeah, listen to them.
Yeah, that's Atrocity Exhibition by Danny Brown.
I feel like listen. So there's two things now that kind of have kickstarted my love for genres, because we'll get into it in later podcasts, because I know that there's an album I want to listen to, but I've been really big on my like bedroom pop shit right now, and just like pop music in general. And we went to a deathcore show last night. Yeah, and I've been listening to nothing but metal today. Like,
nice.
Aside from listening to this before.
Yeah,
and now I'm like, I want to dive into more of his music, and like it's kind of like revitalized my love for metal and rap in like one week now. So
hell yeah, yeah. But yeah, yesterday we saw Hometown Heroes, Signs of the Swarm. Opening for them were also Hometown Heroes, 156 Silence, Of Sulfur, which they're not from Pittsburgh, but they were still pretty good.
They were good. I wasn't expecting, and I told one of our friends that we were with yesterday, I saw their drummer downstairs, and he had like all the like makeup done. I was like, I expected the whole band to be like that, and then he was the only one in the band.
Yeah, yeah, Of Sulfur is kind of like a blackened metal, and the drummer was wearing full like corpse paint regalia, so it was very interesting. And then none of the other people were dressed like that.
Yeah.
And then Awaken Providence opened too, which they were interesting to see live. I wasn't really that familiar with them. We've seen 156 Silence. They always do really well.
Oh, they put on a really good show.
Yeah, and obviously being from Pittsburgh, we're always going to support them. Yeah. But yeah, we'll have to. I'll show you. I'll dip into my my bag of death metal, deathcore. I'll show you some stuff. A whole new world.
I've listened to like some stuff in deathcore before. Like I used to listen to Casey Strain, which I know they hate the term deathcore for them, but like it's and Amir. I used to listen to Amir a lot too. But
see, well, I'll get you where you need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
But all right, well, episode 3, Atrocity Exhibition by Danny Brown. Tune in next time,
or don't.
Murder us in a Ford car facility in Detroit.
Yeah. It's the most American way to go.
I don't know. I hate Henry Ford though.